Hi there, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Katie Johnson with Grain and Paint, and if you followed me for some time on Instagram, you know that I love taking vintage furniture and breathing new life back into it. And I'm here to teach you how to do it yourself. In today's video, I'm breaking down sandpaper grits and explaining exactly what that means. I remember when I first started out refinishing furniture in my own home to save money, I would watch other refinishers here on YouTube and Instagram, and they would throw around numbers like 80 grit or 120 or 220, and I had no clue what that meant. I also didn't understand exactly why they were using particular numbers during particular parts of the process. Well, I quickly came to find out you can't just use any grit for any part of the job. And I'm here to teach you all about that in today's video. So if you're a newbie to refinishing furniture like I was not that long ago, you're going to want to know exactly which grits you'll want to have on hand when you start your refinishing project. You'll want a variety of options in your refinishing arsenal. I actually think that sandpaper is the item I purchase most frequently. You'll also want to know which ones you're going to most likely grab for at each step of the refinishing process, and I'm here to break it down for you step by step. So if you're looking to learn something new about the process of flipping furniture, or just need a little motivation to take on that project of your own, or maybe you just want to feel a little less intimidated about how to start when you're ready to tackle your first refinishing project, then you're going to want to stick around. Okay, so as you can see, I've moved out into my studio, also known as my garage. It is a gorgeous spring day. You can probably hear the birds chirping in the background, but I want to go ahead and get started. If you're new here, I love giving you the bare basic information, breaking down step by step the refinishing process. So you have all the information you need as a beginner. So what is sandpaper grit? So sandpaper grit actually refers to the size of the sharp or abrasive particles that are on the sandpaper. Sandpaper is measured by grit size. So it's actually the size of the particles per square inch on the actual sheet of sandpaper. Those grit numbers actually mean something. For instance, if you had a sandpaper grit of 60, the size of those particles are going to be larger on that particular sheet per square inch. And when you have a larger particle, it's going to be more abrasive. So those sandpaper grit numbers, and you turn over the piece of sandpaper and you see the numbers on the back, that is actually a system of measurement for telling you how coarse or fine that abrasive paper is. One thing that's really nice is that these numbers don't vary across manufacturers. So if you have a 120 grit with one manufacturer, more than likely you're getting the same 120 grit across manufacturers. So now you know what sandpaper grit is, and you also know what those numbers on the backs of the sandpaper sheets mean. But why is it important to you when you're refinishing furniture? Well, you're going to want to know which numbers to use at what time. When you're walking through your home improvement store, you're going to see generally 3 different terms for the sandpapers you're looking to purchase. You're going to see the term coarse, you're going to see the term medium, and you're going to see the term fine or super fine. So let me walk you through the different categories of sandpaper, because you're going to want to know this when you're refinishing your piece of furniture. So let's talk about coarse sandpaper. Coarse sandpaper is always going to help you remove a previously painted finish or a heavily dark stained finish. When you're looking to strip or remove your piece, especially if you're looking to take it to bare wood, you're going to opt for a coarse grit sandpaper. You'll find that the coarse grit sandpaper, though, does leave, because the particles are larger than your finer grit sandpapers, it is going to leave some scratches on your piece. So you'll want to be careful that you're choosing the correct grit. Always move up in grit if you start to see that your piece is being scratched too heavily. Now let's talk about your medium grit sandpaper. The medium grit sandpaper is definitely the one that I use the most. I tend to use the medium grit sandpaper whenever I am scuff sanding my piece. I usually use something like a 120 grit because it's not removing the finish. That's not my goal when I'm scuff sanding my piece. I'm just looking to break up the existing finish a bit by scratching it up with tiny scratches that the sandpaper or abrasive material is going to leave in order to give my piece some tooth for my paint to adhere to. I also like to use a medium grit sandpaper on the higher end of the range whenever I'm sanding my piece in between paint applications. So I'll often paint my piece or prime my piece and sand it down with a 320 grit sandpaper, sometimes even 400 or 600 as I'm getting closer to the final coat of paint. This is going to give my overall finish a smooth, buttery feel. Okay, so let's talk about fine grit sandpaper. This is probably my favorite grit because this really is what finishes your piece. Anytime I'm looking to close up my wood grain, if it's a natural wood surface, I'm gonna go over it with a high grit, fine or super fine sandpaper. Remember, the higher the grit number means there's more particles per square inch. So the more particles, the smaller the grits. And that's really gonna smooth out your finish. A lot of times after I have painted my piece, I will go over it entirely with even a 2000 grit sandpaper to give it that buttery smooth finish. Okay, now that I've broken down sandpaper grits for you, and I've also explained why it's important to understand which grit to use at each part of the refinishing process, I also want to say you can get a lot accomplished just by hand sanding with sandpaper sheets. However, if you're looking to get a little more advanced in your refinishing skills, I would recommend making a small investment in a random orbital sander. I purchased a 5-inch random orbital sander at the beginning of my journey. It was inexpensive. It's lasted me through a lot of different pieces, and it has helped me save a lot of time, especially when I'm removing existing paint or finish from a piece of furniture. As always, all the links to the products I use can be found in this video description. So I've given you a lot of information today, but I hope that you have learned something new that can help you in your refinishing journey. If you've learned something, or maybe you feel a little bit more motivated, or just empowered with the knowledge that you could take on a project of your own when you're ready, go ahead, hit that subscribe button and that like button, and make sure you hit that bell so you're informed every single time I upload new video content. Till next time.